storms. He's been literally out on the scenes of storms as they come in and ready there, trying to bring quick remedy to those who are affected. That kind of service to the state of Florida. The day it's going to boil down to turnout.
I'm Chad, groaning.
The Pope has better things to do with his time than worry about a sex abuse scandal. That statement by the Archbishop of Chicago has many faithful Catholics calling for more resignations. More from Steve Jordahl.
It's hard to imagine a more tone-deaf statement coming on the heels of a fiercely incriminating grand jury report detailing more than 1,000 abuse victims at the hands of 300 predator priests in Pennsylvania alone.
The Pope has a bigger agenda. He's got to get on with other things, of talking about the environment and protecting migrants and carrying on the work of the church. We're not going to go down a rabbit hole on this.
But that's Blas Cardinal Cupich talking to NBC Chicago about accusations that Pope Francis himself is involved in the cover-up of a gay predator priest. C.J. Doyle of the Catholic Action League says to add Cupich's name to the growing list of Catholic leaders who need to be drummed out of church leadership.
I think Cardinal Cupich is a disgrace, and I think he ought to resign, and it's also a measure of just how obtuse and how clueless these modernists, these leftists in the Catholic hierarchy are.
He says there's a homosexual network in the church which has to be purged before the church can recover from these dreadful scandals.
This is a kind of homosexual hostile takeover of the Catholic Church. This is a kind of enemy occupation. Nothing will be rooted out. Nothing will be changed if these people are allowed to remain in place.
Doyle says if a good man were elected pope tomorrow, and it's not a given that there's one in the wings, it would take a generation to resolve the problem. I'm Steve Jordahl.
And finally, Labor Day weekend is upon us. All studies suggest you might be traveling this weekend.
Throughout much of the nation, Labor Day signifies the end of summer vacations and a return to more regular working hours. Daylight is less, it's darker in the morning when you leave your home. That's why so many people take one last trip somewhere, traditionally this weekend. An airline industry group expects 16.5 million passengers this weekend, and that's 500,000 more than last year. But if you're not flying, though driving, AAA says gas prices are down in recent weeks, but about 45 cents higher than last Labor Day. Eben Brown, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome into the show. Friday. That's right. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. And Monday is a day of rest from labor because it's Labor Day. Oh, yeah. So we'll be enjoying that. Right now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who's on the show today. We have Republican strategist Lauren Zelt coming on this hour to talk news of the day, break down a few things for us. And then we're going to have a few discussions about, evil striking out and getting bitten back in one case. And in another case, another example of people who shouldn't be here in the country, illegal immigrants, killing Americans. So we have that as well. I'm tired of it, but it's going to take more than me being tired of it and you being tired of it. It's going to take all of us collectively being tired of it, regardless of party, in order to make a change in that area. And then we have some really good news today. I love doing Good News Friday. I love good news any day, but especially on Fridays because it's a great way to launch off into the weekend. And so we have some information about that LGBT counseling bill that was getting pushed through in the assembly in California, which would have been kind of like a benchmark for the rest of the country to basically punish Christian counseling organizations for trying to help people who are confused about their gender. Instead of being able to tell them, look, there's hope, there's help, they would be forced to ignore what the Bible says and to basically validate the incorrect thinking of people who are mentally ill and really need assistance. And so I'm overjoyed to see this news, and we're going to talk about that as well. And we're also going to get into your calls. In fact, I'm going to be taking those all hour. So I'd love to chat with you if you want to weigh in on anything we've discussed this week or anything that we're currently discussing on the show today. Please feel free. It's 866-963-2037. You call in and I'll get to you as expediently as I can while we're covering the information. Right now, I want to talk about this. This is a breaking news story. It's you might have seen a little bit about it, but I found the response from the sheriff to be very, very instructive. And so this is good information for all of us, the law-abiding and the lawbreakers. This is a group buffet for everybody. So that you have this Uber driver who's called to pick someone up, and he kind of drives into this situation that he's not aware of what's going on. He happens to be an off-duty police academy graduate, a concealed carry permit holder who is carrying at the time. So, every person who has a concealed carry permit does not carry all of the time. But if you have the permit, you are permitted to carry. That permit also extends to your vehicle, which is treated as your domicile in stand your ground states. And so and also in castle doctrine states. And so you have this Uber driver coming in. So in the first audio clip, you're going to hear the reporter kind of set this up, and you'll get a feel for what was going on before the actual shooting. It's number 3.
Justifiable homicide all day long.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd says the evidence shows the Uber driver, Robert Westlake, acted in self-defense. Jason Boak stopped in front of Westlake, got out of his truck, and pulled out a cell phone like a handgun as he approached the car.
I say something? Oh my God. Oh my God.
Westlake called 911 as he tried to revive Boak.
He ran me off road, jumped out of his vehicle. I couldn't get away. He came towards me, shouted he's got a pistol, reached for his waistband. I'm applying pressure to the wound. He's faintly breathing.
So here's the backstory on that. You have this guy who's a convicted felon, and he's at this, it's like a roadside bar, a place to eat, if you will. And while he's there drinking and eating, his ex-girlfriend, she shows up and she sits down and has some drinks with him, and they get into a bit of a brawl. They start fighting. And so she leaves. She says, I'm out of here. And then they begin to text back and forth. Enter the Uber driver, who's unaware of any of this happening and going on. The guy who's doing the convicted felon, that's Jason Beck, B-O-E-K. He's 34 years old. He's fresh out of prison. So the Uber driver is 38-year-old Robert Westlake. Now, Robert Westlake has a dash cam in his car that he uses for Uber pickup. So he's an Uber driver, and he has a dash cam. Now, what happens next is where it's unfortunate, but this is what happens when, if you're a criminal, obviously you're not the smartest tool in the shed, and now you've got the problem of being inebriated and also, upset because you've had this disagreement with your girlfriend. So he's thinking, Jason Beck, the ex-con, his girlfriend leaves in a huff, and he thinks she's left in an Uber vehicle. But the Uber driver, Robert Westlake, came and picked up another client, not the girlfriend. He picked someone else up. So Jason Beck, the ex-con, comes out and follows the Uber driver in the car. He's driving his truck. He cuts off the Uber driver's car, and the dash cam shows him pull over in front of him and block him off. So they come to a full stop. Jason Beck jumps out of the car and approaches out of his truck and approaches the car of the Uber driver, and he's making threats. That's what you're going to hear, the kind of conclusion of that here in number 4.
Police say it all started at a bar in Dundee, about 45 miles south of Orlando. Boak and his estranged girlfriend Jessica Mazzarella were drinking here when they got into a fight. Boak left, but was still watching the bar from a truck he borrowed from a friend. Police say Mazzarella was texting with Boak while also helping a bartender get an intoxicated customer into an Uber. Boak followed that Uber thinking Mazzarella was inside. but she wasn't. He told her he planned on assaulting the driver. But what police say Boak did not know was the driver, Westlake, was a recent police academy graduate and armed with a legal concealed handgun.
Here's a message for the hotheads of the community. Don't do that stuff. Good people carry guns, and they will shoot you a lot. Graveyard dead.
Sheriff officials say Boak had an extensive criminal history. It was actually on probation for a previous felony battery charge. Tony DeCopel, CBS News, New York.
So he's got a previous felony charge. He's on probation for battery. He's planning on beating up the Uber driver. He's texting the girlfriend thinking she's in the car and that the beat down is going to happen in front of her. Instead, he reaches for his cell phone, and when they checked his car, they didn't find a firearm. They found illicit drugs and drug paraphernalia, but they didn't find an actual firearm. He reaches for the cell phone. He's talking about shooting the Uber driver. The Uber driver, in a justifiable self-defense, he shoots him. So this is the way it's supposed to work, although it is unfortunate that the guy actually wasn't armed, but he was making the threat verbally, and that's all that was present is a credible, reasonable belief that you are about to be killed for a person to utilize stand your ground. So why am I covering this on the show? Well, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment, and I do think there are cases in which the stand your ground law has, it seems like there's a bit of a double standard, especially down in Florida. But in this particular instance, this is a classic case of a clean shoot. And that is, police officers often use that terminology, clean shoot, to indicate that the shooting was warranted. So ex-cons who are out of prison on probation for battery, battery charges, running around getting drunk, and then planning on basically battering someone else, and he ends up getting shot instead. It's the way it's supposed to happen because the Uber driver shouldn't have to undergo a beatdown in order to be justified in defending himself. It's unfortunate that the ex-con was killed, but in most shootings for self-defense, the instruction on self-defense type shooting is that you shoot to disable completely the attacker. So I'm never happy to hear that someone has, had to discharge their firearm, and it's the prayer of all gun owners that they don't have to ever use their gun in self-defense. But as the sheriff said, don't go around threatening to beat folks up. Don't go around instituting assault and battery and instigating it. Don't do it. And if you are a person who's concealed carry certified, continue to be trained, continue to go to the range, continue to to pray over the fact that you're going out and you're doing that. It's an extra responsibility. And you hear him exclaim during the first clip, you heard him exclaim from the dash cam video. It also had audio. You can hear the passenger cry out. He cries out. It was a traumatic incident for them. And then he tried to give the guy life-saving measures until emergency could arrive, but it was to no avail. So really, really sad story all around. I'm not ever going to be a fist pumper on a story like this, but it is a classic case of a clean shoot and one that people should pay attention to so that you can know. So that was a clean shoot. What is not a clean shoot? What is a shooting that would result in the person who did the shooting actually being brought up on charges for manslaughter or something like that? Well, it sounds a lot like that case where the gentleman pushed the other guy to the ground because he was screaming at his wife in the parking lot, and he ended up just shooting the guy when his life wasn't in any immediate danger. He'd been pushed, but his life wasn't in immediate danger. So there's nuance to it, and it really relies upon the way the stand your ground law is crafted in the state where the incident occurs, and what the sheriff, the ultimate arbiter of whether or not to refer the case for prosecution to the prosecutor, whether the sheriff decides that this was a clean shoot or it wasn't. And so, that's that story. Also, I just want to comment on we have not spent, it's Friday, we have not spent the entire week basically in idol worship to elected officials who have passed on to their reward. And I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time paying attention to the trending news today is that Bill Clinton is still Bill Clinton. people are calling him still the first black president, and that he went to Aretha Franklin's funeral instead of John McCain's. And people have been, well, you haven't said anything about, either one all week. I think it is fitting to, say, oh, that's terrible that someone has passed away, but I'm just not going to engage in the kind of hero worship that I'm seeing from some individuals over the passage of any person really. Just comments if you need to. I'm also not going to engage in telling accurate truths that may sound like criticism during this very difficult time for the McCain family. So that's that. The whole week. Look, we made it all the way through, and that was the only mention. Fantastic. So the call lines are open at 866-963-2037. I also want to point you to this story really quickly. This story I thought was so dastardly, and it ended up kind of being a big deal online on social media. And it's about this billboard that's being displayed in Texas. And it's in the Dallas metro area. And we did talk about this a little bit. The tweet that I sent out about that billboard has actually been favorited 22,000 times and retweeted over 12,000 times, because most people who see the billboard are outraged by the callousness of telling women, black women take care of their families by taking care of themselves. And then in all caps, like 78 font, abortion is self-care, like a spa day. Self-care is going to bed on time, exercising, or getting a nice walk, getting some time in the sun every single day, calling a friend, unplugging your phone, unplugging your TV, and just reading a book. Self-care is supposed to indicate little things that you're doing to kind of push back against the insanity of our crazy schedule. Self-care can be deleting things off of your schedule and saying, I'm just not going to do that, and focusing on the major items. Self-care can be as simple as babysitting for someone else so you can spend time around kids. Self-care is not abortion. The reason blacks are marketed to in this way is because our lives are not as valuable as other people's lives. And I don't mean like Black Lives Matter. I mean like Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, eugenicists, and other people who support Planned Parenthood, the pro-abortionists. We've lost nearly 40% of the black population to abortion and 18 states worth of Americans to abortion since Roe v. Wade. That's not self-care. That's demonic worship of sexual, really, looseness. Abortion as contraception. I think we should put a stop to those billboards. We'll see what happens. We'll be back with Lauren Zelt right after these messages. Stay there.
Maybe you've been hearing the messages from Preborn asking listeners to join together to help save babies' lives through ultrasound, and you're not sure how to respond. Here's the story of one woman who took that step.
I heard about Mission Preborn just before December of last year and asked my husband if we could give at least $140. Just last week we received our packet. My husband came in the house and he was telling me, this is our preborn packet, the ultrasounds. I started crying without even seeing them. Not only were there 5 babies, but one of the moms was having twins. We were just elated for that.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies' lives that were spared. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your sponsorship goes to saving babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. You don't have to be smart to fight. For the most part, fighting is pretty stupid. Karen and I have been married since 1971, and as you can imagine, over this period of time, we've had our share of disagreements and arguments. But we don't argue quite as much as we used to. We've concluded that we're in this thing for the long haul, and we've also seen the downside of fighting, arguing, and disagreeing. I suppose you could say that we've matured some. I hope we have after all these years. Today, although we still have our disagreements, and we will aggressively disagree from time to time, we're more apt to focus on a certain perspective of the issue and try to resolve it and move toward a resolution of the conflict. working it out rather than having to prove who's right or who's wrong. Most of the fighting and the quarreling I see really is based on selfishness, protecting some turf and proving I'm right and you're wrong. Most fighting is pretty stupid. It doesn't accomplish anything. Instead, resolution and reconciliation should be our goal in any conflict. That's what we're looking for. God has called every follower of Jesus Christ to be proactive, to be intentional about resolving conflict. I want you to listen to these words in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 3. Listen to what Solomon says. Keeping away from strife is an honor for a man, but any fool will quarrel. That's pretty straight, strong language. Keeping away from strife is an honor for a man, but any fool will quarrel. Solomon is saying that honorable people pursue unity. Quarreling is for fools. So don't be a fool. Don't go there. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Don't pick a fight. Stay away. Be a resolver of conflict and not a contributor to strife.
Legacy Moment is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hello. Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you. Good to be back with you. I'm super excited about getting to the phone lines today. It's Friday, and I love chatting with our listeners. So we're going to first speak to a caller from, I believe, it's Texas. Shelly, thanks for calling in to Stacy on the Right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
You're on the air.
Hello.
I don't think
This
she can
is
hear
Shelley.
me, guys. Maybe we need to get her a better line. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you, but I don't think you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yes. Welcome to the show.
Okay.
What's your comment?
Thank you. I would like to give you just a little bit of background. 33 years ago, I had the opportunity to adopt a baby girl who was conceived as a result of rape, was scheduled for a saline abortion when she was 6 months old in the womb. The doctor said she would have multiple handicaps and that her biological mother would not be able to survive the birthing process. The mother, though handicapped, was no pushover, and she asked the doctor some questions, and he said, I can't answer those questions. It's big. And so she went to Birthright, and my family got recommended to adopt her. She was perfect and one of the healthiest kids I've ever known, and I've taught for 30 years. And she is the mother of my 4 incredibly beautiful, brilliant grandchildren. So with that background, I would like to ask you the question. We just recently, the Senate just passed another spending bill completely funding predatory Planned Parenthood. Ted Cruz and John Cornyn didn't vote. Why is there no outcry? We're at 61 million babies killed, and no telling how many generations of children have we lost. Why do I just hear crickets when the people who say they're pro-life are doing nothing?
All right. So thank you for sharing that story about your daughter and your grandchildren, which it's like adding an arm to your family tree, having children or adopting them. And thank you for sharing the information about Ted Cruz and Cornyn. I'm going to let you go so we can have a clear line here. So this is the question I've been asking numerous times during the show this week. I've pointed out that not only does Planned Parenthood get the $558 million, not only were they fully funded in the last bill, not only I played audio from Rand Paul from 2014, from 2006, from this year, just a few weeks ago. In fact, it was the week before last week that Rand Paul was on the floor of the Senate decrying the fact that Republicans were blocking his amendment that would have defunded Planned Parenthood. There are 33,000 centers across the country, multiple centers in every state in America and our territories that are federally funded clinics that provide all of the reproductive care services and health care for women and children and men, everyone, doctors who are certified OBGYNs and nurse practitioners, and these individuals actually are taxpayer funded and they don't provide abortions. That's the only thing they don't do. And so I don't understand why Ted Cruz would abstain from voting. And he might say, well, I was campaigning because he's up for re-election and he has a very tough go against this Beto O'Rourke, who is actually of Irish descent. He's not actually Hispanic at all. And so I'm not sure why Ted Cruz didn't vote, but I'm calling on everyone. I renew my call for people to engage in fasting. And fasting has such a bad rap in the Christian world in that most people think you have to go without food and water for 40 days, and there are no variations. You can give up meat. You can give up all food and just have water. You can fast for a half a day, a full day, meaning 24 hours, sun up to sundown. It's up to you. You pray about what God has for you to do. But the reason we don't have what we're looking for, what we say we want, is that we haven't decided that it's of enough importance for us as Christians to corporately fast for a specific end. In the Bible, over and over and over again, the Israelites fasted and prayed and received protection from God. They received reprieve from judgment. They received, things that had been taken from them would be restored to them. It's because we're not fasting and praying. That's and obviously we have a cultural sickness in our country where God has been removed from the public sphere. And without God being openly acknowledged, he's not going to leave his hand of blessing on us forever if we're going to do that in response to him, that open rebellion. So I think a lot of our elected officials, they go to Washington, D.C. and they get corrupted. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of power that is being traded and exchanged. And I think the majority of the people that we have in the Senate, while they may be Republicans and they run on the Republican ticket and they receive money from the Republican National Committee, they're not truly in line with the Republican Party platform, which is completely and utterly pro-life. One of the last things that Phyllis Schlafly did before she passed away last year was to serve on the platform committee of the Republican National Committee and at the convention. And it's the most pro-life platform we've ever had. And I'm just as flabbergasted as you are that we don't have movement on this and that we continue to fund Planned Parenthood. And it's not just the $558 million, it's the $1.2 billion in reimbursements from the federal government through our programs. $1.2 billion, that's not a drop in the hat. That's major money. That's something that all of us, it should keep us up at night and it should spur us on to pray and fast about that God would give us a supernatural type of a answer, not just the regular answer where you pray and you kind of wait and you keep doing what you're doing and you wait for the answer to your prayer. I'm talking about a mighty wind, a refreshing wind of revival to flow through this country to get us where we need to be, which is not funding Planned Parenthood. And that only takes care of a third of the abortions, by the way, about 340,000 a year through Planned Parenthood. The other 600 or so thousand are done by private doctors. It's another battle. We want Planned Parenthood first, and we can't lose our resolve. So let's commit ourselves to fasting and praying about it. And let's go to the phones again. Sam from Kentucky. Sam, thank you so much for calling into the show.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, because I heard your last caller. I didn't want to make that mistake again. Anyway, so I am not a Christian, but I am also not like a promoter of killing children, obviously. And so I was wondering so I'm a little back and forth on the abortion debate. We claim to be pro-life, but at the same time, millions of kids are homeless all over the world. Millions of kids really don't have the kinds of, how you would say, conditions to be brought up healthily. And thousands of kids in America are in foster care homes. Thousands of foster parents do it for the state checks. I was just wondering what your opinion is on being pro-life. Like, what does that entail? Does that mean we are pro-life, advocating for quality of life after birth? Are we solely focusing on the fetus? What is your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, when you talk about there aren't thousands. There are probably well over 1 billion children on the face of this planet who don't have adequate food and water and are living in conditions that we would consider to be outside of what we would permit here in this country. We are not responsible for the entire planet. What we are responsible for is what goes on in the country of our nationality. So as citizens of America, the children that we should primarily be concerned with are those who are in our country and are American citizens. That's the first thing. The second thing that you mentioned is that there are a lot of kids in foster care. There are about 450,000 children in America in foster care. And the church has been spurred on for about 15 years now, it's been going on, to go out and adopt children, regardless of whether or not the ethnic background is the same as your own family, to go out and adopt kids to take care of that heavy burden that is placed on the state, the federal government, by children whose parents are incarcerated or addicted to drugs or who have been killed. And so the church has answered that call and has increased adoptions exponentially to get those kids out of foster care. As far as whether or not we care about life after the child is born, the pro-life movement is a reaction to the passage by the Supreme Court of Roe v. Wade. So the primary effort is to ban abortion in this country because it is the killing of a human life. But pro-life organizations also have an entire arm of what they do that is devoted towards helping people who make that life decision for their baby to help them to have a place to live. I actually speak at organizations like this. My husband and I, we are a part of an organization like that here in St. Louis, where we absolutely fund diapers, rent payments. We give them furniture, anything that's needed. So I don't just stand outside the Planned Parenthood here in St. Louis and speak. I don't just rail against abortion here locally on the radio and nationally on the radio. I also put my dollars and my time and my resources towards women who've chosen life to make sure that they have a place to live that's safe and clean. They have electricity, they have heating, they have cooling, they have dishes, they have food, they have supplies for their babies, and that they have postnatal care, prenatal care and postnatal, and care for the children all the way through. So the idea, this is actually a lie. That's not true when people say that.
That's not a lot of people are aware of that.
Because the left says that we're not. The left lies about the pro-life movement.
That is so true, and I totally agree with you. Being in such a polarized country is really hard sometimes because the left and the right are, stereotyped into being things that they're not. I totally agree with you. Personally, I'm not really sure where I fall. So I have another question for you, and then, I'll leave you alone. But I really appreciate listening to you guys. So defunding Planned Parenthood would also defund people's access to contraceptive care, to access to resources that help screen for cancers, STDs, STIs, HIV, AIDS prevention, things like that, sexual health information, things of that sort. So I was wondering, if defunding of Planned Parenthood is something that is eventually accomplished, that Christian organizations would take the lead, not only providing pre- and postnatal care, incredible, but do you think they would also stand behind offering services for those things as well?
We're already doing that. Pregnancy resource centers provide STD testing and contraception, all of that. But pregnancy resource centers already provide that. But the church doesn't need to step up to the plate on that because there are 33,000 federally funded healthcare centers that are free to women to use for their reproductive care. And those 33,000 centers, federally funded, are all over the United States. They outnumber Planned Parenthoods Planned Parenthood has, I think, under 500 facilities in the country that provide those services. So 500 Planned Parenthoods, if they were defunded, they would still be there because those centers would have the private funding that Planned Parenthood has. So what you're saying is that there's a loss if Planned Parenthood isn't federally funded, and that's not true. The only loss is that we would have 1/3 less abortions.
I hope you have a great day.
You too.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Have a happy Labor Day. And thanks for calling and
Yes,
your questions.
you too.
I appreciate you asking and seeking out to get the answers instead of just kind of going with the flow, which a lot of people just listen to whatever's out there. I'm absolutely happy that we had a chance to speak to a couple of callers just now. And if you're still in the call queue, we'll get with you. Right now, I want to go to our guest. We have Lauren Zelt, who is a Republican strategist, joining us to talk news of the day. And also she was the press secretary for Senator Kelly Ayotte. Lauren, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Stacey. Thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity today.
Yeah, so it's good
and
to
I have
talk
to
to you.
tell you, I liked what you were talking about with the women's health centers.
Yes.
Because nobody knows that, and it's so important. I actually, when I was working in the Senate, visited a few of them with Senator Ayotte, and they're really great places. And so I'm glad that you were, talking about those and educating people about that, because it's really important, and no one talks about it. So thank you.
I appreciate that you've actually been to a couple of them. I have two here in St. Louis. I've actually been to two of them. I have to say, when you say clinic, I think some people might have this weird connotation that it's something like different.
Not at all.
It's just a doctor's office. I mean, it's a clinic because it's more than one doctor and nurses and all of that, and that is the technical term for a medical office, whether it's in an office building or whether it's a standalone building. But it's really just whatever doctor you go to, it's just like that. It's the same kind of facility. It's the same. There's nothing substandard about it. They're federally funded, as opposed to hospitals that you go to are usually privately funded by, a hospital system that's owned by the Catholic Church or, used to be Jesuit in nature. There's tons of different ways that we get all of our hospitals, but it's like going to any doctor's office. The only difference is they don't perform abortions, but they do mammograms, they do pap smears, they do everything that you would normally be able to get. And some of the things that Planned Parenthood doesn't do. Planned Parenthood doesn't actually do mammograms. So they don't actually provide prenatal care either. If you come in and you say, I'm having this baby, they'll just give you a list of OBGYNs in the area. They don't actually take care of women who are, actually going to have a baby.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren,
right.
Can you hold on over the break and then we'll get to the news of the day?
You bet.
All right. Thank you. We'll be right back with more. We'll also take your calls with Lauren, so it'll be really fun to do that in the next segment. Stay tuned for these important messages. We'll be right back.
The Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
There was a time where I was in the middle of doing something, and the Lord just really impressed upon my heart that I needed to buy my wife some flowers. I hadn't thought about it, hadn't done it in a while. I walk into the door of our little small apartment, and I have the flowers in my hand, and my wife's eyes connect with mine. Her eyes just well up with tears. And I immediately start thinking, what's wrong? What happened? What's going on? And she said, Abe, I've been wanting some flowers, but I know what our financial situation is, and I didn't want to be an additional burden on you because I know things are tight now. And man, it was just a moment where my wife and I just fall more deeply in love with the Lord and more deeply in love with one another.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk.
By relying on Him. Oh, God. Oh, Lord, I thank you. I thank you, Lord. I thank you, Lord.
This is Poll Paris with Fox News Director of Polling, Dana Blanton.
Generally speaking, do you consider yourself a Democrat or a Republican? Or don't you consider yourself either? We ask that question on every Fox News poll. Usually, more identify as Democrats. It's been that way consistently for over a decade. It isn't by a lot. On average, in each of the last few years, the Democratic Party's edge over the Republican Party was 3 percentage points. And more voters in the 2016 presidential election identified as Democrats by 3 points in the exit poll. However, recently that advantage is widening. Democrats had a 9-point edge over Republicans in our latest poll. In March, it was 3. In February, it was 6. In 2017, Democrats averaged a 6-point edge in affiliation. Lots of folks ask me, how come those numbers shift around? Here's the thing. Party identification isn't a fixed characteristic. It's an attitude that can move around in response to the politics of the day. Undoubtedly, it will keep bouncing around. I'm Dana Blanton, and that's your Poll Paris.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. I think people probably do identify as Democrats a little bit more, according to Dana's Poll Paris there. I guess it depends on who they're calling, right? Are they calling likely voters? Are they calling actual voters from the most frequent voters from the last 2 or 3 cycles? Are they calling voters who vote only during the midterms or people who vote only during the general? Are they calling in certain metropolitan areas? I mean, I'd love to know the polling methodology for how they select the individuals who will make it into the poll. And the other last thing that I got to ask is, blacks typically are underrepresented in poll responses because we don't like taking polls. That's what pollsters all over have told me. People as high up as who work at Rasmussen all the way down to local pollsters who do local political polls. But they also talk about how your poll is based upon who answers. So if it's a phone poll, it's who answers the poll and stays through until the end so their answers can be counted. So if Democrats are more interested in answering poll questions than Republicans, then you're going to have some of this uptick be accounted for in that. I've taken all the polls I'm going to take. I used to take every single one, every single poll, no matter what time they called. I would stop what I was doing and I would take it by the phone. I don't do that anymore. So that's one Republican they're not hearing from if they're calling. Also, you have to wonder if it has anything to do with landline usage. If they're doing the polls via landline and most people don't have a landline anymore, then that's another way that they might be missing Republican voters. So good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the program. StacyOnTheRight.com. And we are speaking with Lauren Zelt. She's a Republican strategist. Lauren, it's Friday, and I know we have tons of news still. It's like we never have a break from all of the news. What is hot on your radar for this Friday afternoon going into the Labor Day weekend?
Oh, wow. Well, I've got to be honest with you. I've been very taken with watching all the services for Senator McCain. It's a sad moment for our country. And, I know towards the end, he had a lot of disagreements with President Trump. But to me, I think it was Paul Ryan that said in the service today that, he was one of the bravest Americans our country ever produced. And I think that's right. And, I've met him a few times, when we were on the campaign trail with Mitt Romney in 2012, he was with us at one of the debates, and, I had the privilege of staffing him that day. Saw him a few times when I was in New Hampshire, and, I've just been very taken with it. It's hard, it's hard to look away. I'll certainly be watching the funeral tomorrow morning, but I don't want to bum your audience out, and I'm sorry, it is the Friday before a holiday weekend, but that's because of what, that's what I've been consumed with. But I think,
Well, Lauren, I'm actually not bummed out at all. I mean, obviously, we knew that he had brain cancer and that it was terminal and that he would be passing away. I'm deeply sympathetic to his wife and his children on their loss. But as far as Senator McCain being one of the greatest Americans we've ever produced, I think that's probably, in my opinion, a stretch. And I think no greater indication of the kind of pettiness that was engaged in is the fact that they prevented Sarah Palin and her family from attending the services. And so I haven't seen a lick of it, and I don't plan to watch any replays of it or anything, not because I have any animus, but because I just think, when it's one thing when you're alive and you're having these kinds of disagreements, it's another thing to carry it over into the services where you deliberately exclude someone who she had her life really, the trajectory of her life utterly changed by the fact that she said yes to his request to be on the ticket as the vice president. And now for the funeral, her family's not even permitted to attend. And she's been so above board. Even when she was openly criticized by him, she never responded in kind. She's only said respectful things about him for the entirety of the years intervening between her being his campaign vice president and today. Even just as recently as last week when she was asked about being at the funeral and why she was excluded, she said that they continue to respect and greatly value the friendship of the McCain family, and they wish them the best during this time. So,
Her statement, that was pretty classy. I did see that. That was a very classy statement.
Yeah, it was on her part. So I'm not, I understand why we let people lie in state, but I also think it's just weird for me seeing the different people who are so excited to eulogize him in light of the fact that he was a Republican. So the majority of the support that's coming towards him, especially in the speakers, he's having President Obama speaking there, and some others who President Obama would never speak at a funeral for, any other standard Republican. And there's a reason for that. And so I don't want to be the kind of person who throws a bunch of salt on a time like this where people are mourning. So that's why I've kind of left it off of our show. And not to, if people are enjoying, and really spending time engaging in that is their purview. And I think it's the right thing to do. It just depends on who you are. But I'm more concerned about, once all of this is over and we come back on Tuesday from our break, we still have Mueller indicting people for stuff that could be prosecuted through the IRS.
Yeah, that's definitely, something that, I think is going to be right in the back of the front of the news cycle next Tuesday. But, also on Tuesday we have the Kavanaugh hearings, which are going to be very important and very critical. And I, for one, am quite excited about that. I think a lot of the Democrat senators who, they had decided that they were going to vote no, no matter who it was, even before the nominee was named. And, I'm sure on Tuesday some of the Senate Dems will, try to make him look bad. It'll probably be a bit of a circus. But the reality of the situation is we are about to have another conservative Supreme Court justice, which is awesome. And I'm with you. I'm really excited about that.
Me too.
And I'm also really excited about the fact that, the fight for the midterms really starts in earnest, after Labor Day. I mean, this is the time, people like you and I, we're paying attention all the time. We're looking at polling, we're doing all this kind of stuff. Most Americans, they've been at the pool with their kids this summer. They haven't really been paying attention. And now, now we get the fight going. And I'm excited. I'm feeling really good about where we stand heading into the midterms, especially about the Senate. I think, we could possibly only make gains in the Senate, which is terrific because the map is awful for Democrats in the Senate. And, they're just defending so many seats in turf, like in your home state.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay, talk to me. Claire McCaskill, how do you think it looks for her? Have you seen any background polling on that?
I'm not working on that race, so I haven't. The only thing I will say about this is that I tend to respect, even if I disagree with a politician, but if it's a female politician and you're good at winning, it's hard for me not to, kind of be like, wow, how does that keep happening? I will say, though, I think Josh is a great candidate. I think that, he will do, he will do well, and I think there's definitely a possibility that he can knock her out for sure. I think right now it's still a toss-up, but I will give it to her. She's a fighter. So,
yeah.
We'll see. You have in your backyard one of the, most contested races. And, so especially, friends and neighbors, I don't know if you're going to get out and campaign for Josh Hawley, but I think that would be a great idea. I hope he's joining your show. I hope he's, really making his presence and meeting as many voters as he can, because, it's going to be a tight one. It is. But I feel good about his chances.
Well, I think they most recently called it a toss-up, and she's even said in audio at an event that she's in the race for her life in a state that, has no statewide elected Democrats, and so she's concerned about being perfect. But she's also voted against Gorsuch's nomination, and I think she's going to vote against Kavanaugh. I don't know for sure. She hasn't actually said, but I'm pretty sure Claire McCaskill's going to vote against Kavanaugh's confirmation on the Supreme Court. I think it's going to be bad news for her to do so, but I think she's going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I think you're right about that.
Yeah. So I'm wondering. So that you're right. It is a hotly contested race, and I am watching it. I invited Claire McCaskill on the show. She's been invited by my producer, I think, multiple times. I know he's invited her twice. I think he reached out again because we have had Josh Hawley on the show during the primary, and we do plan to have him on again before the election so that he can, talk about his campaign. But we also, we have offered the space to Claire McCaskill, and we hope that sometime between now and the actual election, she'll come on just to give our listeners an opportunity to hear from her directly instead of, me having to find places where she's spoken and share those clips. And obviously she's on MSNBC a lot and cable news, but it'd be great to hear her, it would be great to hear from her. I don't understand why she can't give us a chance here. Certainly not for lack of audience size or engagement. We would be very, very happy to have her on. So let's talk a little.
The only thing I'll caution you though was saying with her saying that she's in the fight of her life. That's often used. Candidates say that a lot so that they can use it for fundraising. So whether or not she actually believes that, I don't know. I know that that's what the polling is saying for sure. But whether that or not that's actually what she believes in her head, who knows? But yeah, I mean, the Democrats especially, they love that, they love really making people nervous, that they're going to lose so that they'll give more money. I mean, it's just the whole thing. But I personally think that was used to probably try to bring in donations. But what do I know?
Well, that's how I feel. I'm like, what do I know? I mean, I think she's concerned. But how concerned she is, I couldn't tell you, because she really has done a masterful job of winning elections against viable candidates so far in her career. I want to go to the phones and take a quick call. We have Mary from Kansas. Mary, thanks for calling into the show. We have Lauren Zelt, who's a Republican strategist, on with us today.
Hey, Mary.
Oh, I'm not sure if we still have our caller. She was on a little bit earlier. I don't see any response there. Okay, well, so we don't have Mary, but we do have, my producer said that was 20 minutes ago. So let's talk.
Time flies when you're having fun, Stacey.
Yeah, it does, especially when I'm talking to friends. I can't help it. I'm sorry that we didn't get to her. I really wanted to speak with her. Or actually, did we already speak to her? That might be a little bit of me on the crazy pants side. Let's talk about Kavanaugh's hearing. Okay. So Kavanaugh is actually they've set up 2 war rooms. The White House has. Aides will provide rapid response as he testifies, and they're making last-minute preparations for the confirmation hearings. He's holding final prep sessions. I personally feel, I've watched I won't say a lot, but I've watched a decent amount of whatever there is of him speaking publicly, and he really seems like he's really, really capable. Like I don't see him getting caught up, I know they were concerned with one of the possible contenders. Her name's slipping my mind right now, but you know who I'm talking about. She was an amazing, she is an amazing jurist, mother of 8.
I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name at the moment.
Yeah. So I wanted her, but they were saying they were concerned that her faith and her open practice of, fundamental Catholicism, et cetera, and especially her pro-life views, which had been publicly expressed, might be a stumbling block for her. I don't see Kavanaugh having those same issues. Do you?
I don't, and I actually think that's why he was chosen. I think that of sort of who we knew was the top list of nominees, I think that he was chosen because he was sort of the safest bet to get through confirmation. Now, I will say, I know that I think some on the Hill were a bit concerned because he does have a very lengthy career in which he's tried a lot of cases, written a lot of things. And so he has a little bit more of a paper trail than others. And so I think on Tuesday what you're going to see is you'll see some of these senators, I believe it's Senator Chuck Grassley that will preside over the hearing. And he did an excellent job with Gorsuch's hearing as well. So I expect to see the same this time. But, I think you'll see, Democrat senators, they've got their opposition, research and, busy preparing for this. And I'm sure that they will pull things out, from 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I don't see why he would be stopped. And I think that he is likely to just go through this process really nicely. I mean, and the media has been doing some crazy stuff to try to, to try to discredit him. I think I saw one article and it was like, well, in college he liked to eat spaghetti. And it was like, okay. Like,
he borrowed money to go to baseball games. And I don't mean borrowed, like he spent credit card. So he used his credit card to purchase tickets to go to baseball games. And it was a lot.
Which
like
is about the most American thing ever.
Right, but he spent a lot of money. Some outrageous sum, like $30,000 or something.
Oh, I know.
And then he paid it back. He paid the credit cards off.
And he had spent the money because it was like a group of friends, and they all just had him buy it. That's why.
Right. I mean, I'm just like, what's the problem with that? Like, so first of all, don't you wish you had a friend who you're like, let's all go to baseball games this entire season, but instead of us buying the tickets individually, you buy them. And so you say that to your friend. Instead of them going, are you out of your mind? They go, okay, I'll buy them. And so they buy the tickets, and then you reimburse him. And he's not even worried about you reimbursing him. Each ticket's like a couple $100s because they're sitting in these really great seats, and they're eating and they're enjoying themselves. And any friend could flake out, and then he'd be on the hook. And instead, they're mocking him for that. Like, I just thought they could find something better.
I know. It's been honestly really fun to watch. Like, it just makes me to be very proud to be a conservative, to be honest with you.
Me too. I was watching it and thinking, I know our side wouldn't go here. I mean, we're not perfect, but wow. Well, Lauren, it's been great to chat with you today. Thank you for coming on. Happy Labor Day. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back with more after this. Stay tuned.
Urban Family Talk.
Vice President Mike Pence called the Values Voter Summit the greatest gathering of conservative, pro-family Americans in the nation. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is September 21st through the 23rd. Sponsored in part by AFA Action, the summit will encourage and equip you to preserve America's republic. Learn more and register at valuesvotersummit.org. That's valuesvotersummit.org.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Now that Canada has rejoined trade talks with the U.S., does this mean a deal is on the horizon? They're supposed to wrap things up today, as Edward Lawrence reports.
Extreme optimism. That's the word of the week from the Canadian delegation. President Donald Trump gave the deadline to sign on to a trilateral deal, something Canada's chief negotiator is well aware of.
I would say, this is a very, very intense set of conversations. And I continue to feel that there is a lot of goodwill on all sides.
Canadian negotiators work day and night like speed dating to get to know the agreement that the U.S. signed with Mexico. White House advisor Jared Kushner joined the talks just as he did right before the Mexican delegation made their deal with the U.S. The Mexican economy minister still in town to see if a trilateral deal can be worked out.
It has been confirmed that a Christian teenage girl kidnapped by an Islamic terrorist group back in February is still alive. Bill Bumpus reports.
According to the persecution watchdog group International Christian Concern, Boko Haram, based in northern Nigeria, has released an audio recording of Leah Sharibu asking the president of Nigeria to help secure her release. Sharibu's family has confirmed that it is her voice on the recording. She's the only girl that remains kidnapped, as the others were released or had died. ICC's Nathan Johnson says she's still captive because of her faith.
The other girls, when they came back, straight up said that she was allowed to go free if she would deny Christ and convert to Islam. And she said she was not willing to deny Jesus Christ in front of a bunch of older terrorist men.
Johnson tells AFN the ball is now in President Buhari's court.
This will really show if he meant what he said a few months ago when he stated that he was going to work to get her released. He now knows for sure that she is alive. It is his chance to prove whether or not he's actually going to work for this young girl the same way that he did for the other 104 that were released.
He asked for prayer for Sharibu and her family, and that she will remain strong in her faith and stay healthy and whole. I'm Bill Bumpus.
Children in need of foster care and adoption in Buffalo, New York are paying a price because of political correctness. That's according to this report from Charlie Butts.
Catholic Charities in Buffalo has begun the process to phase out current foster care and adoption services under contract with the local government social service organization. Spokesperson Rose Caldwell explains that while the contract doesn't end until March of next year, they must close the program to avoid violating state anti-discrimination laws.
Catholic Charities cannot simultaneously comply with state regulations and conform to the teaching of the Catholic Church on the nature of marriage. Catholic Charities cannot uphold the requirement that contracting agencies allow same-sex couples to foster and adopt children.
Marriage is a union only between one man and one woman, but the government sees it differently, so the children have to be placed in the care of people living in grievous sin.
The program currently includes 55 certified foster homes with 34 children in care in 24 homes.
The agency had been placing children for nearly 95 years, but no more. Listeners might recall Catholic Charities of Boston stopped placing children in 2006, and similar action was taken by Catholic Charities in several locations in Illinois in 2011, all because they would not violate the Bible. I'm Charlie Buss.
And finally, scientists say they believe they found a way to make cows more environmentally friendly. Jack Callahan explains.
Researchers at the University of California believe they have found a way to reduce emissions from a potent source of greenhouse gas, discovering that by adding small amounts of seaweed to the feed of a herd of dairy cows, they reduced their methane output by 30%. Cows release lots of methane by burping, passing gas, or making cow pies. The university is about to begin a larger study, which will include beef cows this time, to verify that the seaweed works and is safe for the cows. Farmers in California are under a state-mandated deadline to reduce emissions from livestock by 40% by the year 2030. Jack Callahan, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Y'all have encouraged us to go out, stand for the Word of God, stand politically.
It's truly a blessing to hear how God is using Urban Family Talk.
Just want to say I love everything that Urban Family does.
Will you take a moment to share your story? Call 877-327-5647. That's 877-327-5647. Thanks.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Now, Stacy Washington.
Politics today is a lot less about ideology and a lot more about the disconnect between the people who make our laws and the people that live underneath them. If you want to understand 2010, 2014, 2016, and I believe future elections, you have to understand that there's an enormous gap between what public policy elites, people in government, the media, and academia are focused on, and what everyday people care about. And they're not lined up. And so I think there's a sense across the American political spectrum that the people in office spend all their time fighting for things that don't matter in the real world. And the things that matter in the real world aren't getting enough attention. And so they want to send people that are going to blow it up, that are basically going to force change in the status quo. And the more the established figures in politics attack you, the stronger it makes you in the eyes of people that want to see something different.
His analysis, I think, is spot on. It explains both Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. It explains Bernie Sanders' surge, as well as Andrew Gillen's victory. The extremes are running both parties because they're exciting both groups of voters.
Wow. So, okay, listen. Welcome back to the show. And I just have to say that the One News Now and Fox News clips at the top there, right before we came back, where they were talking about giving the cows the seaweed. So are these dairy cows? Like cows that make milk? Because if the cows are making the milk that we're drinking, do we want to drink milk that has seaweed in it? Seaweed is not exactly something that humans can consume, or can we? I know I'm not a rare foods chef or somebody that runs around eating, like some people go out of their way to eat things that are not normally considered for human consumption, and they do that because that's just something they like to do. I'm not one of those people. I don't want to eat cows that have eaten seaweed. I don't want to eat cows that have been forced to produce less methane. I just want to eat regular cow, but from a farm here locally. I like to get our cows, our meat from a local farm, which you should do. If you've not tried it, it tastes so different. It tastes much better because the local farmers actually have like a relationship with their cows where they, most of them are named and they interact with them, and they taste so much better than the meat that you get at the grocery store, which isn't bad. I mean, the grocery store cow meat is delicious too, but it's amazing the difference in the taste. Yeah. I mean, I just wonder, so did they first make sure that it's seaweed that's safe for human consumption? And have they tasted the milk from the cows that are eating the seaweed to see if the milk from those cows tastes differently? I mean, I have a lot of questions. And even if you answer all those, I'm still thinking I'm a no. Like, I would want the seaweed cow meat labeled that it came from cows that ate seaweed. It's just me. That's how I am. That's how I would, that's what I want. All right, welcome back to the show. We actually just heard, my producer said there's, so Jason Tross, Jay Tross, who is normally, you hear and see him on the Hamilton Corner. He's filling in as executive producer, which was his old role on the show. Now he's back chilling out with us today and yesterday because my producer is having some time off. And he just sent me a note saying, hey, there are seaweed food products, but I think I'll pass. I'm with Jason. I'll pass as well. I don't have any desire to eat that. And it's fine if people do want it, but I just don't want all the cows to be given the seaweed, because then I won't have an option of not having a cow that's had seaweed. But I will reach out to the farm that supplies our side of beef that we get on a yearly basis, and I'm going to ask her. She and her husband are both veterinarians. They're both these are farmers, but they are well educated, and they have been farming for decades. And I'm going to ask her if they plan to do the same thing with their cows, because I don't want any seaweed cow. I don't want any. All right. So you just heard Marco Rubio commenting on the public policy priorities and how the elites, and when I say they're elites, so an elite is someone who operates and lives in a way that is completely different from the way us regular folks, we pick up our own kids from school, we pump our own gas, we buy our own groceries, or we order it and have it delivered. And we really are much more, kind of like your regular run-of-the-mill people. And then you have elites who they have drivers, they have, and these are government officials. These are elected officials. So they shouldn't be elites, but they are, because we pay them too much, to be quite honest. And there's too much power centrally located in Washington, D.C. And when we say that these so-called elites have this enormous gap between themselves and everyday people, well, they do. And so they govern that way. And what Americans are doing by sending all of these non-politicians to Washington, D.C. is they're trying to bust it up, trying to take a sledgehammer to it. And I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to see that actually occur, because we need that refresh. It's like, you must have had this happen to you before, where you maybe go into your garage and you look around, you're like, whoa, when's the last time I cleaned this place out? Stuff just starts stacking up. One person puts something down and someone else puts something down. And the next thing you know, you're like, when's the last time this place was addressed? So you then go out and you clean it out. You put stuff back where it belongs, wipe everything down, whatever, hose the floor off, whatever you feel like you need to do. And Washington, D.C. is well overdue for one of those. It's like it's the power is all hoarded there. It's like a person who has 37 cats and they're living in there with 20 years worth of newspaper, cats, and whatever other rodents and beasts are living in there that they've just ignored because they're completely oblivious to how filthy everything is. That's the condition of Washington, D.C., and we need people to go in and clean it out. That's what President Trump is trying to do, and that's why everyone's trying to stop him. And, you know, as a flawed individual, which is what he is, we are all flawed individuals, but he happens to be a man of, you know, outsized everything, including the flaws. But he's doing things that Mitt Romney never would have done. Never. He's doing things Jeb Bush never would have done. So we have to be willing to see it through and to pray for those who are elected over us, just like we had to pray for Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and George Bush. We got to pray for Donald Trump. So now I want to listen. Speaking of prayer, Nancy Pelosi says she believes in the power of prayer. Now, I don't know who she's praying to. Sounds to me like she's been praying to the wrong direction. So that her prayers have been going in the wrong way. They've been, instead of going up, they've been going down. Here she is talking about why she believes in the power of prayer. It's number 2.
Speaking of women's rights, can we stop Kavanaugh, and how?
I pray a lot. I believe in the power of prayer, and I think it is urgent. This, of course, is a Senate matter in terms of confirmation, but all those groups I talked about, they're out there on Kavanaugh, too, because it's a danger to affordable health care, women's right to choose. Any stare decisis, the Brown versus the Board of Education, civil rights, voting rights, environmental protection, and the rest. So this is as serious as it gets. And again, public sentiment. If the public is aware of what it means to them in their lives, elections have ramifications.
So she said on women's rights, which is a euphemism for abortion, that she prays for the women's rights. So she prays for the right to destroy human lives in the womb. So those prayers are not going up. God is not answering those prayers. The fact that abortion is still legal is not it's not a evidence that people who pray for abortion are getting their prayers answered. And the fact that she would say that, well, I mean, you guys know she's able to take communion as a practicing Catholic in California, where she lives, but she is refused. She's denied communion as being outside of the church's teachings on abortion and reproduction, all of it, in Washington, D.C., where she spends the majority of her time. They do not give her communion in D.C., and they should not, and they shouldn't be giving it to her when she's in California. But anyway, she definitely has, I mean, it's just such a repugnant view. It's crazy. All right, let's get to this fantastic information about AB 2943. And if you want to call in, hey, it's Friday. It's your day. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So this is something we covered on the show, and I'm so happy to report this result back. And there's something that it's worth pointing out in this story, and we'll get to that. So it's an incredible answer to prayers of thousands of people across the country who joined in opposing California's controversial AB 2943. Assembly member Evan Lowe was the author of this legislation. The legislation would have basically made it illegal for counselors, ministry leaders, pastors, anyone who was doing any kind of counseling to give anyone any kind of information about not being transgender, not being, not suffering from body dysmorphia. In other words, if they came in and said, I'm suffering from body dysmorphia, this bill, AB 2943, would have forced Christian organizations and everyone else to say, and good for you. How can we help you to be more solid in your belief that you're in the wrong body? Instead of saying the Bible has the answer, Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins, there's a way to for you to be set free from this. So apparently it was a few months that this assembly member, Lowe, spent traveling up and down the state, meeting with a wide variety of faith leaders that changed his mind. So instead of everybody just saying, well, there's nothing we can do. He's just going to put this bill up. No, they went on the radio. We had people from California Family Council. I know we had someone from there on our program to talk about this. And these individuals, after doing some media and radio and continuing to pray about it, they sought this man out and said, before you present this bill, why don't you find out what we're doing? Can you come visit us? Come and find out what we're saying to people who are suffering from body dysmorphia. Find out what the Bible says about it and in our view. Don't prevent us from telling the truth to these people. Come find out what we're saying before you present your bill. Well, he personally met Assemblyman Lowe with pastors, professional counselors, former homosexuals who lead ministries to others in the LGBT community. And then he said, after meeting with them, I want to continue the dialogue. I want to move beyond this legislative session into the next legislative session because I don't feel like I've heard from everyone enough. I've learned a lot, and I don't feel like the bill is ready for submission right now. He says, with a hopeful eye toward the future, I share with you that despite the support the bill received in the Assembly and Senate, I will not be sending it to the governor this year. This was received with relief and gratitude by Jonathan Keller, president of the California Family Council. So the thing that sticks out here is that when we as Christians say, nope, that doesn't sound like a good idea, and then we start off with prayer, that's where we begin, and then we reach out and actually reach out to the legislator who's presenting the bill, the people who are considering making the change, whether it's local or it's statewide, and then we bring them in and say, please, can we talk about this? Instead of just having us protest you at the Capitol, come in, talk to us, let us show you what we're doing, let us show you what we believe so you can understand why this is harmful to us. This is a victory. And obviously he says he's not going to send it to the governor this term, so he's going to wait until next term, so he's doing some more research, so it's not done. We still need to continue to pray about this. But look at the magnitude of the result and how wonderful it is. And in California, which is a state that we often, California, the left coast and all this other stuff about it, we can still get good results, but we have to be willing to work. And so I was really excited about that story when I got it today. And I'm happy to share it with you here on the air. It's also on my Facebook page. And if you wouldn't mind sharing it as, one of your last social media things you're going to do before the weekend, if you're unplugging, share it to your page so other people can be encouraged that we can get victories, even in California, when we reach out and do that hard work of talking and convincing these elected officials. All right, we'll be back with more right after these messages.
Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. For the last 2 years, we've just had tremendous response, early response to the announcement that we're going to Israel on a Holy Land tour. We're going March of this year. We go March of every year. Last year we filled up like early fall, and I expect us to fill up early fall this year as well. So if you're interested in this March 14th through the 22nd tour, and you'll be going with primarily supporters of AFA and AFR, just get the brochure and check it out. You can call us today at 800-FAMILIES, 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and leave us your name and your address, and we'll mail you a brochure. If you simply want to go online, all the information is there. It's at twholyland.com, twholyland.com. If you want to go in March, we're filling up, and we're filling up fast. So check it out, twholyland.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Does the 14th Amendment automatically grant citizenship to anyone born in this country? That is the current policy of this government, but a number of constitutional scholars disagree. I've written about this in the past and want to focus on it again, but I've also noticed that a number of conservative lawyers who have been on my radio program accept the government's policy. So if you think the policy should be changed, I would recommend you start by convincing fellow conservatives and constitutionalists. Michael Anton is a lecturer at Hillsdale College, and he writes in the Washington Post that citizenship should not be a birthright. He says, quote, "The notion that simply being born within the geographical limits of the United States automatically confers U.S. citizenship is an absurdity, historically, constitutionally, philosophically, and practically." The purpose of the 14th Amendment was to resolve the question of citizenship of freed slaves. Essentially, it was needed to overturn the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision. Second, the amendment specifies two criteria for American citizenship: birth or naturalization, and being subject to U.S. jurisdiction. It is that second point that has been used to justify birthright citizenship. Government officials argued that subject to the jurisdiction simply means they're subject to American law. Therefore, you can argue that a tourist is subject to the laws of America while in this country, but that appears to be a misreading of the amendment. Michael Anton says that the problem can be fixed if Congress would clarify legislatively that children of non-citizens are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and thus not citizens under the 14th Amendment. Although that may be true, he needs to start by convincing his fellow conservatives that such a change needs to be made. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Trump is winning and winning and winning. He's winning on judges. He's winning on NAFTA negotiation with Mexico. He just won in the primaries once again this week. And despite all of the effort of the liberal media, what you see is a steady consolidation of a set of ideas. And I want to raise this California thing because it may become one of the great moments in American history. The candidate for governor of California, who was the former mayor of San Francisco, a city which now has a specialty patrol going around every single day cleaning up human feces because they have so many people who are defecating the street. I mean, this guy now wants to do for all of California what he's done for San Francisco, and it combines with what Senator Feinstein did in the Senate. She introduced a bill that is essentially an open borders bill. Now, he basically comes along and says, I'd like to make sure that if you get across the border, you'll get free health care. Well, you know, if the Gavin Newsom model works, you realize all around the planet, how many people who have a disease are going to say, you know, I just got to get to California for my free health care. This is close to madness.
Well, Newt Gingrich, he's always just right there. Just right there. He's always right on top of it. Welcome back to the show here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Go to afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com to find out more about the hosts on the network and different things that we have available for you there on the websites. Also, I want to go to the phones because it's Friday, and I love chatting with the listeners on Fridays. So we have a caller from Arkansas. Lynn, thank you so much for calling into the show.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just had a comment about the seaweed and the cows and everything. First of all, I know climate change is bogus, and they're, you know, having all these solutions that, well, anyway. But as far as seaweed goes, seaweed is actually really nutritious. But I have heard that because of, I think it was called Fukushima in Japan, the deal where the radiation went into the ocean, that there's radiation in a lot of different areas, and you really don't know where all it is. And I stayed in California for 3 years, and before I went, somebody was telling me about the radiation, the effects that they had found on the coast in California.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and then when I was there were dead animals washing up and stuff. So I'm not a rabid environmentalist or anything like that, but I am kind of cautious about areas where you get something out of the ocean because you really, you know, it's kind of iffy.
You make a good point, Lynn. And so I've read the same thing. In fact, they recommend that when you're at the grocery store, especially for us Midwesterners, people in the middle of the country, when you're buying like your shrimp and stuff, your seafood, that you check and see if it's from the areas of the areas of the Pacific that have the elevated radiation. And I think it's kind of fascinating that they would put seaweed into the cows, which the cows are not contaminated, at least the ones in the Midwest aren't. But if they feed them seaweed, they could be. That's a fascinating point that you bring up. I hadn't even considered that. I was just thinking about just the taste of the seaweed, and I don't even know if it has a strong taste because I haven't eaten any.
It's kind of got a salty taste. I know that in health food stores they have seaweed that you can eat as a snack, like that comes in a little package, and then they have it for seasoning and all kinds of different things. People put it in soup. It's supposed to be really good for you.
All right, Lynn.
But,
I'll take it from
really
you.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm just saying. I just don't. I'm just not wanting. So I'm one of those people who, if something works, I don't want you changing it. I don't want you coming in and like, we should add seaweed to these so we can stop them from, pushing out methane. Why? But so it's as if people don't think, and I know it's godless individuals who worship the climate, but Lynn, you and I both know that God was aware. He knows all things from now to, the end. He's at the beginning. He's at the end. He's in between. He's everywhere. He is in all things. He's in all the dimensions we don't even know about yet, and he's in ours. He is not shocked that cows emit methane. It is not a danger to our climate, quote unquote. And the fact that our farmers are wasting time on this is just a travesty.
Yeah. A long time ago on a talk show, I think it was Point of View, there was a woman talking about climate change. Back then they called it global warming. And she had been to some of those meetings that the people who want the one world government and all that, and they had said that that was going to be basically a strategy to bring people together. And that was in the 90s.
So more obfuscation. I can't even handle it. I'm just like, it's one thing when they're talking about the climate and they want people to worship it and, turn your electricity off and sit around and don't watch TV and stuff like that. It's a total another thing when they're messing with the cows. Like, I want them to stay away from the cows. Like, you know what I mean? There's some stuff you just got to keep your hands off of. And those cows are one of those things. Not only are they wonderful, magnificent beasts, but they're tasty and we shouldn't mess around with them.
Well, I think that the climate change people, a lot of them want to go toward making everybody vegetarian, period.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Lynn, have a happy Labor Day and a great weekend. Thanks for calling into the show.
You too.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
I'm talking to the listeners. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I got to say that Jason Trost has a little bit of, he's got jokes today. He's talking about, seaweed tastes salty like the ocean. Yes, Jason. I called on a person who was also not on the phone anymore because I already talked to them because I'm like, I must be having senior brain today. And now I'm surprised that seaweed is salty. Hey, this is who I am today. I haven't had enough coffee or something's going on. All right, let's go to the phones and talk to Joy in Colorado. Thanks for calling into the show.
Hey, Stacy, how are you? Longtime listener of the show.
Oh, thank you.
But I definitely wanted to ask you about the billboard in California. Yeah. So I just wanted to know if you knew who was backing that billboard because, abortion is what it is. But, we've got Planned Parenthood, and so we understand Planned Parenthood, but now we've got this new company, whoever they are, AFIYA.
Mm-hmm.
But, I went on their site, but I just don't know much about them and why they would say abortion is self-care.
Okay, so that billboard that you saw, I tweeted about it, and there's been a few stories over at Western Journal, Twitchy, a few places have written about it. And actually, I'm going to give you Pastor Stephen Broden. Pastor Stephen Broden. Oh, don't let me mess his name up. He is amazing. Pastor Stephen Broden. So what he did was he put out a billboard, and it's in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And these are pro-life billboards that are going out across the country. But the particular one that this AFIA billboard that everyone's so up in arms about the
right.
spa, and abortion, that one is a response to his billboard. And his billboard says, abortion is not health care. It hurts women and murders their babies. BlackProLifeCoalition.life. And that's his website, Pastor Stephen Broden. And he has a mom. She's black, and she has a cute little black baby there who's asleep, and she's looking at him. And that's the billboard that they have. So in response to that, the AFIA organization, which is the only organization in all of Texas that is run by a board of directors that is all black women, they put up billboards in response saying that abortion is self-care. Now, I tweeted out that, so you're basically saying it's like a day at the spa. It's not. It's abortion. It ends a life. And so, so this is the goings on that's happening. The reason people are so up in arms is because the picture shows, if you've seen it, it's 3 attractive black women smiling at each other like they're leaving a restaurant, for, like when women go out and have, they eat wings and drink sodas at happy hour and then, go to a movie together or something, just, hey, let's get away from the husband and the kids and have a few minutes to ourselves. That's not what abortion is like. Like, that is not even close to what it's like. So I actually took part in a letter that we wrote to Essence Magazine, a bunch of pro-life pregnancy resource centers and pro-life leaders, and they allowed me to join in to express our horror at this article that Essence Magazine published that basically says that pregnancy resource centers lie about the services that they provide to women and that they're not safe for women. Like if you go to a pregnancy resource center, it's basically like a place where you can get kidnapped or harmed, which couldn't be further from the truth. So we wrote a letter saying, Essence Magazine, which gears towards black women, should not lie to them about what pregnancy resource centers do. But this is a concerted effort for them to strike back at the success and expansion of pregnancy resource centers across the country. Pregnancy resource centers are actually streamlining their operations. Previous decades, they wouldn't offer contraception because they felt like it went against the mandate. But now they do. They offer STD testing. They basically operate like a clinic, and they have nurses and nurse practitioners on staff. And what happens is when girls go in there, they can get STD testing, they can get contraception. So it's a direct competitor to Planned Parenthood, only you can't get an abortion there. And if a woman goes into a pregnancy resource center and says, I'm going to have this abortion, the pregnancy resource center will say, well, we're going to pray for you. We hope that you won't. If you change your mind, contact us. After you've had the abortion, contact us. We want to give you care. We want you to join our Bible study. Even if you have the abortion, we still want to work with you. And that is how we're dragging these young women and these girls out of the clutches of Planned Parenthood. And they don't like seeing that. They don't like all the lives that are being saved and the fact that women are learning that you don't have to get pregnant and use Planned Parenthood for contraception. You don't have to do that.
Wow.
And that's why they have the billboard.
And that was just, to me, a smack in the face to black women. And I was just like this. I was just curious how it just focused on black women. So
well, it's a black organization, and they're focused on black women mainly because a lot of the pregnancy resource centers, and this is something I just learned, a lot of the pregnancy resource centers across the country are run by black women. So it's as if we're saying, hey, we know this is decimating our community. And we trust God and we love him and we want to work for him. And so we're gonna be involved in this. And leading the Bible studies, a lot of black women. I mean, around here locally, it's a mix of women, but one of the largest organizations is headed up by a black woman here in St. Louis. And I rarely see someone so finely tuned to what God wants them to do. And she operates like a sword, a sharpened sword on behalf of the pro-life movement. And she's not alone. There are women like her across the country. They're silent warriors saving babies' lives 1 month at a time. They actually keep a tally of how many they save. So it's that's why they got the billboard up. But I tell you what, they can't come against this. We're doing God's work in supporting life, and we're going to win.
And I really like that program you're working with. I'm going to, start committing to helping them out because I like what they're doing. They're doing just more than, just, donate to us. They're doing, like you said, assisting with rent, Pampers, and a lot of other things, getting in there and, helping with counseling and things like that. So I really like
good.
that.
It's
so,
really
thank
good.
Thank you for just answering those questions.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for being a long-time listener.
Sure, I always share your site with folks. So thanks a lot, Stacey.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Have a happy Labor Day. And we'll be back next week with more. We're having a great show today. I'm so glad that we're getting to take calls. If you want to get in, we still have one more segment after this one where we're going to be talking about. So yesterday on the show, we actually had some questions about George Soros. And so I did a little bit of research, but I knew I wouldn't be able to do all of the information in today's show. So on Tuesday, we are going to have all of the info on George Soros. Now, the last segment, we'll still be taking calls, but I have a bit of audio from Dinesh D'Souza. Now, he's been on my program 3 times before, I believe. And I would love for him to come on and talk about George Soros. And so I will ask, but he is very, very busy. And so, you know, it's usually easier to book people of his stature a few weeks in advance, and then that gives them time to put it on their calendar, and it makes more sense. But I will reach out and see if he'll come on. He's one of the preeminent experts on George Soros and the work that he's done around the world. And listening to the different pieces that I found, in particular one interview with 60 Minutes where he was asked about his time as a teenager confiscating the property from Jewish people and how that came to be. I learned that George Soros, so like with many, many people who are evildoers, he has actually a significant amount of work that he's done that's been good. He's donated millions of dollars of his own personal wealth to different people in different countries. He's also destroyed economies. He's also stolen from the middle class in many, many countries their wealth by tanking their financial systems through devaluing their money. And he is, to me, an existential threat to our way of living here in America. That being said, he is an interesting individual. And so the information that I found, I mean, I'm still a bit in shock because I thought I knew quite a bit about George Soros, and I only knew maybe just like the tip of the iceberg. So on Tuesday's show, we'll be devoting 2 segments to unpacking the information and the questions that were asked on yesterday about George Soros and what he does. They call him the destroyer of economies. We'll talk about that. I'll explain how he does that, and I'll explain some of the reactions from different world leaders on behalf of what he's done, positive and the negative things that he's done. So when we get back, we'll hear a little bit from Dinesh D'Souza on George Soros to kind of open it up, and we'll take your calls, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Stacey on the right. We'll be right back. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Just how many genders are there? Scientific evidence has shown that our DNA is encoded male or female. There are no other designations at the genetic level. Tell that to legislators in Massachusetts. Their attempt to follow the trend in Europe of permitting a third gender designation of X on driver's licenses was thwarted by a quick-thinking Republican, State Representative Jim Lyons. Lyons knew that each amendment to a bill in the Massachusetts state legislature must be given 10 minutes for debate and 3 minutes of voting time. Instead of considering the X designation only, he added all 73 of Facebook's gender options for consideration as well. Debating all of the gender options would cause their reasoning for allowing just the one addition to fall apart. As time was of the essence, as Lyons completed amendments for 35 of the 73 gender options, his Democratic counterparts withdrew the bill. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, nothing much, man. Just trying to listen to this last song for the music final.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna fail for the most part. I haven't even listened to it.
Ugh, yeah, me neither.
I've been too busy listening to The Word on the Street.
The Word on the Street?
Wait, you guys haven't heard?
Not heard of it.
Not that one. Well, check this out.
There is only one true word, and that is the Word of God, which is what you will hear on Word on the Street, hosted by me, Victory McIntosh. Tune in as we discuss some of the latest hot topics and life issues, and filter them all through the holy Word of God. It is possible to live righteous before the Lord and enjoy doing it. Tune in Saturday mornings at 9 Central Time. You don't want to miss it.
This is House Call for Health. A new study looks at the human attention span. During the time it took me to say that last sentence, your focus may have shifted a dozen times. The research finds that our attention span jumps 4 times per second. Now, you may think that it would be impossible to get anything done if we're constantly being distracted by something shiny over there in the corner. And there were studies a few years ago blaming our electronic devices for destroying our ability to concentrate. But researchers at Princeton and UC Berkeley say our jumps in focus are actually healthy for us as a species. Let's say you're walking in the forest and see an apple tree. You grab a shiny red apple and focus all your attention on it, and you don't notice the wolf that also has its eyes on that apple and you. Too much focus, and you miss what's going on around you, and that's risky. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health, I'm Joy Piazza, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
George Soros, the big philanthropist who funds a lot of these anti-fascist groups, he just gave $50,000 to the group called Refuse Fascism, and he poses as a champion of what he calls the open society. Well, I found a very interesting interview that he did with Steve Kroft of CBS News, in which Steve Kroft asks him, he says to Soros, "Hey Soros, isn't it true that when you were in your teens, you and another guy were going around your native Hungary, confiscating the property of Jews and turning it over to the Nazi-dominated regime?" Soros goes, "Yes." "And isn't it true that you, in a sense, became a collection boy for Hitler?" And Soros goes, "Yes, I admit I did." And then Kroft says, "And don't you feel bad now looking back on it, all the stuff you did when you were young? You were young, it's to be sure, but surely you can have regrets as an older man." And Soros goes, and this is the key, "I have no regrets." He goes, "All that bad stuff was going to happen anyway. And so I merely played my role. I took advantage of it, just like I take advantage of markets." So here is the secret history of George Soros. Notice that he's been able to get away with this. The left knows about all this, but they give him a pass because he's, quote, fighting fascism. No. When you actually look at Soros' history, you actually see a very dark side, which is confirmed not just by what he did then, but the way he feels about it now.
Richard. So that was Dinesh D'Souza breaking down information on George Soros, and there's so much more. I listened to that. I watched it. It was a YouTube clip, and I was watching it, and I'm thinking, wow. And the interview was about, it was much longer than that. So I'm watching it. I'm absorbing the information. I thought, wait a minute. He was on 60 Minutes? I bet you that's available. So I dug that up, and that one was pretty lengthy. And I listened to that. I'm like, oh. And then there was some more. So really, we will have a full 2 segments. We'll take calls during those segments on Tuesday, and you'll be able to weigh in and get other questions in about, just who this guy is and why we allow him to operate in our country. I know we have a free country and we have a lot of liberty, and we're not like a command and control economy like in communist China, where coincidentally he's not allowed to operate. But I mean, it just seems like we would be able to protect ourselves from him because we know he doesn't have our best interests at heart. He really does believe that he has the best ideas, and he can control things by using his stature as a multi-billionaire and one of the richest men on the planet, and his use of money he's given more aid to countries, individual countries in some cases, than America has, our government. we give $700 million, he'll give $1 billion. He'll do things that actually cost him $2 or $3 billion, and he's still fine. He's a threat to us. So we'll definitely get into that. I am kind of enjoying some of the tweets that people are putting out about the hats and the different things that people are wearing to the funerals that are going on today. Apparently, there have been multiple outfit changes at Aretha Franklin's funeral by the actual deceased. I don't even know how that was possible. So there's been a ton of fun things on that. And I tell you what, I've had such a huge response from people on my little coffee rant from the other day where I was talking about how their coffee machine was broken, and people have just been responding to that. People understand what's going on. People understand that not only do you need your coffee, but also it's an important time for us in America because pumpkin spice latte flavoring, pumpkin spice, it's back. The pumpkin flavored muffins are back. Everything's back, and we're all basking in the joy of being Americans and being able to enjoy this new flavor combination. It's wonderful. Pretty soon, the pumpkin pies will be back. Yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. So I'm not sure if you have big plans for the weekend. We are excited about having our college student back at home with us for the weekend and spending some time with her. Apparently she has a cold, so I'm going to be on chicken soup duty, making homemade chicken soup and tending to her as if she were still a small child, even though she's a young woman. So there'll be that. So I'm hoping and praying that you're going to have a wonderful, relaxing, unplugged weekend, one extra day of fun to enjoy yourself and really maybe get some things done. I was giving that analogy about the garage, and I recently have kind of looked around in there and thinking, this might be my weekend where I pull like masses of stuff out and it just gets carted off. I'm not sure where all that stuff came from. I've refused to take responsibility for it being there, but I will take responsibility for it being carted off and getting out of there. So yeah, I'm looking for the next steps with the big agreement that was just signed between Mexico, or proposed and accepted, but not really signed yet. They're still working on that because that's a congressional type thing between Mexico and the United States. I'd love to see some more details on it. And then apparently the talks between America and Canada have already fallen apart. I mean, like, they work with Mexico for weeks, but now the whole Canada thing it's already blown up. She is presently being live streamed. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, is holding a press conference in the Embassy of Canada saying that there's not going to be a deal. Now, I don't know how they think they're going to get their cars down here, because they're not. Donald Trump already said he's going to put tariffs on all that stuff. And you know what? Good. We can buy some American-made cars, all of us Americans. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about doing. I want to put my money where my mouth is. I'm thinking about, and obviously Honda has plants in the United States, but how about a car that was made completely in the United States, not just finished here? Or how about a car that was made in the United States, originates from the United States, and is manufactured in the United States? Does that kind of car exist? I don't know, but I'm going to check and see. So we'll see about that. So a lot of the pivoting over to Hollywood, a lot of the different individuals in Hollywood are starting to see the kind of ramifications of having this constant political discussion, never having any place on TV where you can go, where you can just escape from it, like the nighttime TV and everything being so politicized. So Lorne Michaels had actually talked about this a few months after Donald Trump took office. He was in a meeting with fellow television executives, and one of them asked him about the threat to the late night juggernaut. Was he worried that his program could face ratings swoon because Jimmy Fallon was much less political than rival Stephen Colbert? Well, Michaels said he wasn't. He brushed it aside, and he didn't seem concerned at all. He said that the pendulum would swing back and Fallon would be fine, but now he's turned out to be mistaken. Oh my goodness. The Tonight Show has been losing ratings for total viewers to CBS's The Late Show as audiences seem to want the acerbic anti-Trump comments of Colbert, they prefer it to Fallon's nonpartisanship. I think that's kind of sad. I think what we're seeing is a lot of people are choosing to watch because they want to see what the flamethrower is going to say next, while simultaneously saying that they don't like the way Donald Trump throws flames. Donald Trump's a flamethrower, and so is Colbert. Donald Trump throws flames, and it's a travesty. It's of the highest order. It's like we need to, pull some walls down and, march with some weird anatomical hats because Donald Trump tweeted. But when these different late night hosts are on TV spreading lies and saying horrible things about the president, well, that's okay. I don't feel like it comports. Either you don't want to hear people who aren't political commenting on politics, and you don't want the president to be acerbic in his tweets on, online social media, or flip it, you're the other way. It's not okay for you to say, well, he can't do that, he's the president, but you then to say about other people, well, he can do that because he's a comedian and he's spreading lies. Because that's my problem with these comedians. They don't know enough about politics and what's going on in Washington, D.C. They're not doing the reading. So half the stuff that they're saying about the president and his policies are untrue. Untrue. So in another pivot, talking about technology, I'm really surprised by this. It's over at fastcompany.com. They're reporting that Apple is blocking their gay pride watch face in Russia. So listen, if they can block it in Russia, why do we have to have it here in America? If it's not censorship to block it in Russia, if it's not anti-LGBT bigotry to block it in Russia, then why do we have to have it in the United States? Do you see the double standard there? Apple would say we have to have it in the United States. But in Russia, where they know if they put it out there, they can have all of their products banned, well, then you don't have to have it. So they're self-censoring the gay pride watch face on the Apple Watch, considering how big a supporter Apple is of LGBTQ etc. rights. iOS developer Guilherme Rambo found evidence that the Pride Apple Watch face is hard-coded not to show up if the paired iPhone is using the Russian locale. Verge also tested this and found that once an iPhone running the latest iOS 12 beta is switched to the Russian locale, the Pride watch face simply disappears. Oh. Russia has passed strict gay propaganda laws since 2013, making actions like supporting LGBTQ rights punishable by jail time. Though Apple must comply with the laws of a country if it wants to operate there, the removal of the Pride watch face one disappoints fastcompany.com. Oh, so sad. Yeah. I'm not sad, by the way. That's sarcasm. So there's a ton of, I guess, people just not really happy about that. I guess probably the people who are okay with the seaweed going to the cows probably feel the same way about me not wanting that as I feel about the Pride watch face thing. So there's all of that. And then there's this secret DMV office. I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently there's a DMV office in North Carolina that is operated 1 week each month from January to August. So WBTV did a big investigation into this special DMV office. When they realized that they were being investigated, the spokesperson said the office doesn't actually exist. Then the spokesperson said, yeah, it exists. It's only available by appointment to certain state employees. So you know how horrible it is to go to the DMV. I mean, it's improved ever so slightly, but not enough to make you want to go there. So you have to go there to register your tags or to get your driver's license renewed. And you do it because you have to. You're forced to do it because you don't want to get pulled over. So what they did was they opened up an office 1 week a month, January to August, for government employees, a special office where they could go in and get stuff done quickly and efficiently, not like for the rest of the people. So WBTV obtained the list of appointments for the week the office was operating in the month of August. The DMV used the online tool Sign Up Genius to schedule appointments, and anyone with the link to the page can view the list of employees who schedule appointments. But a lawyer with the North Carolina Attorney General's office has refused to produce the sign-up sheets for the additional months. Those were made private by the DMV following the event in response to a public records request that was submitted by the WBTV folks. Proof that the DMV in North Carolina needs to be improved is that state employees would rather go to a special office that's a secret and use it instead of going to the regular DMV with the rest of us peons. Remember I talked about the elites? These people, these government employees, they think they're elites. They think, oh, we don't have to go to the same one everybody else goes to because those ones aren't that good. All right, so I promised we would talk about, and it was the title of the show as well, this driver who allegedly killed an Oregon couple in a DUI crash is an illegal alien. Are you shocked? I'm not. The man suspected of killing an Oregon couple in a high-speed drunk driving collision earlier in August is an illegal immigrant from Mexico. Eduardo de Lima Vargas, 39 years old, ran a red light on a state highway in Salem, Oregon on August 19th, striking a motorcycle being driven by Logan Wilson and his wife, Jessie, aged 34 and 32 respectively. The collision tossed the Wilsons from the motorcycle, fatally injuring them both. Vargas drew a .10 blood alcohol level on a breathalyzer roughly 2 hours after the crash. So 2 hours after the crash, his blood alcohol level was still .10. The legal limit is .08. 0.08 is drunk driving. 0.06 is legally impaired. And this guy blew a 10 2 hours later. So he was probably a 12. He could have even been as high as a 14. Unbelievable. They say they believe he was probably driving at twice the legal alcohol limit at the time he crashed. The Wilsons are survived by 4 young children. He remains in state custody on a $500,000 bond. Man. 2 people who didn't have to die, except our border has to be open because liberals say so. Unbelievable. All right, that's the show. God bless you. Have a fantastic evening and weekend and Labor Day. We'll be back on Tuesday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.